Good morning, Sissel, and welcome back, by the way.
Good morning. Thank you all so much. Yeah, that's a great question that I think we all have to ask ourselves. Are we living like we are dying? A bit of a heavy topic before 7 a.m. And I came back so strong. I go on vacation and I come back and decide this is the topic. Something about me, Keith, you may not know, is I'm kind of like that person who likes to prepare for things to go wrong.
Hmm.
I walk into a room and I want to know, like, where is the exit? Where is the emergency storm shelter? What am I going to do if something goes wrong? And it's funny because Tim just commented in our Zoom chat, and that's actually exactly what I'm going to talk about. In the last week, I think I was on 6 different flights.
Wow.
When I was on did a lot of flying, a lot of driving, and every time before I travel, kind of going along with the preparing for things to go wrong, I love to make sure that I'm prepared spiritually as well. Because when you travel, I just feel like there's a lot more opportunity for things to go wrong. So I always go to confession before I fly or drive on a road trip. I try to make sure that the way that I am treating the people around me is I'm really being more careful about how I am doing that, how I'm leaving off relationships and stuff like that. And this particular trip, even more so than usual, my best friend convinced me somehow, and I don't know how, considering I'm already a very nervous flyer, to go skydiving in Hawaii. And oh my goodness, there is nothing quite that like making you contemplate death like jumping out of an airplane at 14,000 feet,
Hmm.
um, which by the way is the highest you could do without needing oxygen.
Oh,
And
goodness.
so, because my friend's like, we got to go all the way. And so I don't care whatever statistic they would tell me saying like, this is safer than being on the ground. I'm like, I don't care. You are having me jump out of a perfectly good airplane. I don't know how I feel about this. And so it was really interesting because we were quite somber the day before we were doing this.
Hmm.
We all agreed we were going to go to confession. We were going to just take everything very, very chill. And oh gosh, yeah, I survived. Obviously, I'm here.
Yeah.
But I will say the second I jumped out of the plane, well, I didn't jump out, the man I was strapped to jumped out. I was just along for the ride.
Hmm.
It was funny, like my friends say that they were kind of just numb. I in my brain was just like saying over and over again, like, Jesus, I love you. I am so sorry for my faults. Like I was very much like I am this is it. But it made me think though, after I realized I was gonna survive and everything was gonna be okay, um, that it's really sad that it takes some pretty extreme situations for me to really, really be thinking upon pondering my death in a
Hmm.
holy way. And I was just thinking that, man, how much better would it be if I and everyone listening, if we always were preparing for our death, not in a scrupulous way necessarily, but we're preparing for our deaths and we're thinking about our deaths in all of our actions, and we're actually taking seriously, our job of uprooting sin from our lives. So yeah, it's
Hmm.
it was kind of a little bit of a sombering thing. I thought, gosh, it took me jumping out of plane to kind of be like, wow, was I actually prepared for my death when I jumped out of the plane? Probably not. Sure, I had gone to confession. I go to mass every week. And sometimes more frequently than that, I pray every day, or that's my goal to pray every day, with dedicated prayer time. But when I was thinking about it, I mean, I think everyone listening right now, you can pretty easily evaluate. I think a lot of our Catholic radio listeners are probably have a good idea of where they are spiritually, and they also are able to probably list off, they might know where are they struggling in life, what sins are like habitual and that they're really
Hmm.
struggling with. And um I just was like, man, I how can we go about just living every single day like we're dying, because we are.
Hmm.
And it doesn't actually take, you're not in danger just when you go skydiving. I drive on I-35, which is a really, really dangerous road here in Texas, actually. It has probably some of the most deaths here in
Hmm.
Texas every single day. And that alone should put the fear of God in me.
Yeah.
I don't know, Keith, what are you thinking?
So skydive or drive on the I-35
Yeah.
to really help drive that motivation to live like you truly are going to die. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's a great point. I mean, we shouldn't have to have a huge event to kind of spur us into having that thought. Like, are we living like we're dying. I think of my own personal situations where I'm driving and I'm now taking a left in a traffic light stop, and there's like homeless people, and there's always someone homeless panhandling, and I'm like, well, I don't want to make eye contact. This is awkward. I'm stopped here,
Hmm.
and they're just staring at me. Well, it's like, okay, well, I can just pony up and just maybe give whatever change I have into him, and actually treat this person like a human being. It doesn't have to, doing something like that could essentially also prepare us, for death. Like, how are we treating our fellow human beings? Are we treating them like Christ-like, or are we just trying to drown people out that we don't want to make contact with?
Hmm.
Mm.
No, that's so true. I think we are extremely, at least I can say for my generation and myself, I think we get extremely lax on
Mm.
actually fighting to break the bad habits, to actually live out every day, to be very fruitful. And we just kind of are like, well, okay, I failed today. It's okay. There's always another day. And yes and no. We don't actually know. Matthew says, we don't, always, what does he say? Therefore, keep watch because you don't know the hour or the day.
Mm.
And so far too often, I know that I'm just like, well, it's okay. That'll be later's problem. I'll try to fix this later. I'll break this sin later.
Mm.
So I kind of was thinking, there's a friend of mine who got some really good advice in a confession once from a
Mm.
priest after she did her confession. He said, okay, you listed off all these sins to me. Pick one of them. Pick one of them, and between now and the next time you go to confession, or now and the next month or two, and absolutely eradicate it from your life.
Mm.
I think we got very overwhelmed when we evaluate where we are, because I know sometimes you kind of like, I don't know, every once in a while I think about, okay, here are the places that I'm struggling in, here are the things that I need to like fix. And then the list just seems to keep going, and you're like, oh yeah, and I also have that, and I also have that, and I really have a tendency of, of thinking badly about this person, and I
Mm.
have a tendency of being lazy here, and it can be very overwhelming to,
Yeah.
well, how do I stop doing that? And I like this advice a lot. And I would argue, like, I would say that probably the first thing would be, if you are not having an established prayer life, to first get that in order, because that will help you a lot. And then you can evaluate some sins you might struggle with. And obviously, if it's a mortal sin, probably start with that to kind of try to get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
But having the relationship with God would help significantly, because if you're trying to do this on your own, it's just going to be the most uphill battle with like a rock weighing you down and having no light at the end of the tunnel, where you're just like, I can do this on my own. And God's like, okay, I'll wait until you say you need help.
That's so true. Are there any saints that you can think of that really exhibit this thought of living to the fullest, or living like we're dying?
Hmm. Well, I can think of off the top of my head, again, it's kind of a little bit
Sure.
of a on the nose one, but for someone who didn't for a long time would be Saint Augustine,
Mm.
or Saint Augustine, however you'd like to say it, because he really struggled for a long time with allowing himself, or like making himself change. He was just
Yeah.
like, save me, but not now. Like, let me do that later.
Right.
So he was someone who could, if you're really struggling in that area, chat with him. Tim said, Blessed Carlos Acutis. He certainly, in a very short amount of time that he lived, he was able to do a lot. There's a Italian female, I think she's a blessed as well. I'm off the top of my head. I don't know why I'm not like hitting her. I think she played tennis and she was a
Hmm.
young girl. She had a pretty serious and aggressive cancer, I think, and she also was able to do a lot with her life in a very simple way in a short amount of time. If I think
Hmm.
of it, I'll put it in the YouTube comments if I come up with her name off the top of
Sure.
my head. But those are some of the ones we can. Some of the the saints who lived short lives, and we have a lot of them. A lot
Yeah.
of them were able to do a lot in a very small amount of time, and it kind of puts us to shame sometimes of what we've
I
done.
know.
Yeah, but don't obviously, I do want to don't be scrupulous. Don't allow this to go into scrupulosity and be going to confession every day, being like, I gotta I think it's much more productive to go to confession regularly, but
Hmm.
also to ask God for help in eradicating sins from your life.
Yes, that certainly does help. And I am one of the saints of the day. I think it was earlier this week or last week was a young boy, and one of the three tenets he lived by. And the last one, and it's just like, okay, I need to get my stuff in gear. Was death before sin. I'm like, okay, and he was not he was like a teenager. Okay, well, all right, I have some stepping up to do. But my goodness, thank you so much, Sissel, for sharing this. I don't think we typically think about our living as if we are dying. So thank you so much. We can also catch you on Back to the Father every Friday at 1 p.m. Central. So thank you much. We'll see you then. But tomorrow on Morning Joy, I should say, Alan Smith will be talking to us about the Blessed Virgin Mary as our life coach on Bishop Sheen Today. But it is the end of our first hour, and we just want to thank you for joining us, especially if you're now arriving at your destination, perhaps to work, school, or of course, Holy Mass. And if that's the case, please pray for us. But we've got a lot coming up on our second hour. We'll be talking about, well, how to parent like Mary and Joseph with Matthew Archibald. So stay tuned for that. But regardless, make sure to follow, subscribe, and like all things Morning Joy on our social media. But if this is us parting ways, God bless and make it a joyful day. We'll see you after this break.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.